Hey guys, it's Mimi with Chocolate Confetti Desserts. Today I'll be making this decadent eggnog pound cake. Now, I'm not a big fan of eggnog, but this cake is so good, let me tell you. It has just a subtle hint of eggnog flavor. And with Christmas coming around, it would be the perfect dessert to share with your family and friends. Hope you try it out. Let's get started. Here are the ingredients I'll be using. I will leave the exact measurements in the description box below. So I'm going to add 3 sticks of room temperature butter to my stand mixer. And right there, I'm just making sure I get all that goodness into that bowl. Don't want to lose out on any of that flavor. And I do the creaming method, which is starting with your butter and sugar. But I like to start with my butter first and gradually, sorry, I was moving my camera. I like to gradually add my sugar just so the sugar has time to dissolve and break down in the butter. So here I'm just gradually adding my sugar to the butter, and the speed is about 4-ish on my KitchenAid. So I like to mix this at least 5 minutes, but I do stop halfway to scrape down the sides of the bowl. You will see this a lot, so I'm warning you now. But I like to do a minute and a half, scrape down the bowl, make sure I'm getting the bottom, and sometimes butter gets stuck on the top of the paddle, so I just like to do it in segments. So here I am again, scraping down the bowl, and now I'm going to just start it back up and add my eggs. Now I add 5 eggs, and I do this one at a time. I don't stop in between because I have the mixer going pretty fast, so I do mix and let them get incorporated before I add another one. And here we go again, mixing the sides of the bowl, scraping the sides of the bowl. You want to just make sure you get all your ingredients well incorporated. And I like to do the paddle too because sometimes a little bit of butter and sugar or eggs get stuck at the top, so I just scrape it all down. So I'm going to start it back up, and I'm going to add some vanilla to this mixture. Okay, so now I'm going to do my dry ingredients. I have a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of baking powder I'm going to add to my flour. And here I have a tablespoon of vanilla pudding mix. You can also use 2 tablespoons of dry or powder buttermilk. Just gives the cake some added moisture. So just mixing that really good. And that's my cup of eggnog. Okay, so now it's time to add the dry to the wet. And you want to do 1/3 at a time of the flour and 1/2 of the wet. So I do 1/3 of my flour, 1/2 cup of my eggnog, and then another 1/3. So 1/3, 1/2 cup, 1/3, 1/2 cup, and then the remaining amount of the flour. And it may look like I speed up my video just to save time, but this is actually like in between 2 and 4. So give it a quick scrape down, and for the last 10 seconds I mix it really well on high, just for 10 seconds. So now just making sure I get all that goodness back into my bowl. Don't want to miss out on any of that deliciousness, so I scrape down my paddle really good. No one is licking that paddle, I tell you that. Okay, and so sometimes when you have a KitchenAid or a stand mixer, the bottom catches a lot of batter that's not incorporated thoroughly. So I like to scrape down the bottom just to make sure I get everything mixed in well. Okay, so I like to use this springform pan by Wilton. It's a angel food cake pan, and what I'm doing here is I have this concoction I make for all my cakes, so I do not use a lot of parchment paper. It is flour and shortening with a little bit of canola oil. I think I used a little bit too much canola oil because it was kind of drippy. Usually I can use a napkin to wipe it on, but it was a little liquidy, so I used a brush, but it still works perfectly. All your cakes will pop out of the pan intact, won't have any stuck in your pans, no matter what kind of cake it is. So here I'm just brushing it all around the sides of the pan, and I did the insert as well. Just making sure nothing is left dry and make sure that my cake does not stick in my pan. So put that in there. So I put my pan on a cookie sheet because it just makes it easier to put in and out of the oven. And I'm just gonna add all my batter. And believe me, I am sorry about my filming. That bowl was scraped clean. I made sure I had every drop of that batter in that baking pan. And I smoothed down the top. One part I didn't do is when I do pound cakes, I like to wrap them on top of the counter just to make sure there are no air bubbles left in there. And I didn't do that, but it was fine. Okay, so my cake is cooled. And I am just taking it out of the pan, just running my knife around the middle and the bottom, the sides. Do not ask me why I had this suspended in air trying to loosen the bottom, but I came to my senses. So it may look like it's tough, but it was actually just gliding at the bottom. And again, because I used my little concoction of flour and oil, it did not stick, not one part stuck to that pan. And there you have it. Clean up my mess. Now, before, I just remembered I made a little bit of eggnog glaze, which was a cup of powdered sugar with, I think, like 4 tablespoons of eggnog. And I only did half of the cake. This cake was for no one. It was just for us to enjoy at home. I made one for Thanksgiving and my mom really loved it, so I made another one. So I wanted to share the video with you. So I just did half of the icing because I never made it before, so I didn't know how it would be with the cake. So I did half no icing, half with icing. And it was late when I finished this cake, so that was my dinner. It was so good. And there you have it. There's my cake, eggnog pound cake.